So good afternoon. I have the great opportunity and honor to be here with you today. Turn off my watch. It's unbelievable. So we're working on Pema Chodron's Becoming Bodhisattva, which you probably can't see, but it's also No Time to Lose. Becoming Bodhisattvas and No Time to Lose. Both the same book. Thanks, Joe, for making sure we all knew that. But different titles. Or are they? Or are they? So we left off last week at preparing, or I'm sorry. We left off last week at, wait for it. Transcending hesitation, commitment. But before we go there, I'm going to wind us back to developing a clear intention. So, what's been your intention? What is your intention? What does that look like every day? When does it start? When does your intention start? And what is the intention? Just get through the day? Get through this moment? Sometimes it's that. But I think it should be a regular, daily, maybe even moment by moment offering to ourselves to really set up the intention for ourselves. Beginning first thing in the morning and ending last thing at night. And within that, a reflection for what that really means to us throughout the day. When I was still practicing Zen, one of my Roshi teachers said, I'm struggling with the vows, and he said, look at the paramitas, but also just pick one thing and be with it throughout the day. And at the end of the day, take stock, reflect. How did it go? Or was it challenging? Or was it difficult? What did you do when it was difficult? What did you do when it was going pretty well? And really, really connect with that intention or whatever it is that you're choosing to do for that day. This book really opens us up to outside of ourselves, but it also says starts here, starts inside. So I want to roll back to developing a clear intention. And if you've got the book, I don't know what it would be online or if you've got it on your iPad, but there's a few quotes I want to pull from. What page is it? It would be page 2. Yeah. And it starts partway down. Those who go in bliss naturally include the Buddhas, but also refers to our own potential. When was the last time you thought you'd go into bliss? When was the last time you wanted to go into bliss? And when was the last time you were in bliss? And what did that feel like? What were you doing? Who were you with? Were you by yourself? We too can free ourselves from the hopes and fears of self-centeredness. The bliss of perceiving reality without these limitations is our birthright. We can free ourselves from the hopes and fears of self-centeredness. The bliss of perceiving reality without these limitations is our birthright. In other words, we come in saying, this is what we're about. And somewhere we lose that. Somewhere we lose that. And any one of us can really look at where that got lost and along the way, how it built up and being lost. The bliss of perceiving reality without these limitations is our birthright. I think that's a really important piece to realize about ourselves. A little further down, the Dharma they have mastered, and this is referring back up to the first verse. Maybe I should read that first, actually. To those who go in bliss, the Dharma they have mastered, and to all their heirs, to all who merit veneration, I bow down. So he's starting by, and I know we talked about this, but I want to remind us, to bowing down to our teachers, and I think to our sanghas as well. According to tradition, I shall now in brief describe the entrance to the Bodhisattva discipline. So then that's where I want to go down. The Dharma they have mastered refers not only to written and oral teachings, but also to the truth of direct experience. And if you're reading Buddha Master's work, that's a constant theme of cultivating. It's a work in progress. It's a work in progress. The Dharma they have mastered refers not only to written and oral teachings, but also to the truth of direct experience, to straightforward, unedited life as it is. So this is it. What we've got is what we got. And so we get to be in it, in the purity of which we were born with. Whatever happens, good, bad, happy, or sad, can free us from self-absorption. If we make use of these ever-present opportunities, then everything we encounter is Dharma. Everything. So think back to this morning. Think back to the moment your eyes woke up. Think to the moment you got out of bed. Think to the moment you stepped into whatever day it was that you had. There was Dharma. There was Dharma. And how did you approach that? I just ran into somebody over at the Hermitage, and I said, how you doing? And that person said, okay. It wasn't Panyawati. And I said, okay. It's being in process with, noticing, being aware of. Moving into page 3, we can't overestimate the power of commitment. So with intention comes commitment. With commitment comes intention. What is our commitment? What do we intend to do today? What did you intend to do when you woke up this morning, when your eyes opened up? When your eyes woke up? What was your intention? Did you even notice? I usually try, most mornings I do my merit in the morning. I start my day with giving merit. This morning I didn't. This morning I got up and turned the heat on and tried to get warm because it was chilly where I was living. But how do we do our days? What's our commitment to ourselves first and then to others? To our parents, to our siblings, to our spouses, to our Sangha, to our teachers. What's the intention? What's the commitment? Moving on and further down, invoking a humility that is also traditional, Shantideva expresses a clear understanding of the danger of arrogance. He knows that even if the Buddha were sitting in front of him, it would do him no good if his mind were filled with pride. So it's coming in, and whether it's me sitting here and doing this class, or stepping in to do something for my teacher, or for my Sangha brothers and sisters, or somebody I don't even know, without it becoming an arrogant behavior. I do it because it's the right thing, because I feel like that's what I want to be doing. The low self-esteem so common in the West rests on fixed idea of personal inadequacy. So then we get hung up. Or we can get hung up. Shantideva is committed to not getting trapped in such limiting identities when he starts his discourse with his Sangha. He is simply humble enough to know where he gets stuck and intelligent enough to realize he has the tools to free himself. And that is true for us. If I feel, oh, I can't do this, I'm not adequate enough, which is an old childhood belief system, not good enough, then that's where I stop. And I have to be humble enough to know that I too can sit here, that you too could sit here and share your experience. So hard to find, this is another verse, verse 4. So hard to find such ease and wealth, whereby to render meaningful this human birth. If now I fail to turn it to my profit, how could such a chance be mine again? And so I want us to really realize what an incredible opportunity this is, to be here, to be in this place at this time, and to be together, both in this building, but also out there, and learning and growing and engaging with each other. From the Buddhist point of view, human birth is very precious. Shantideva assumes that we understand this preciousness. He assumes that we understand this preciousness. With each relative ease and wealth, he urges us to contemplate our good situation and not to miss this chance to do something meaningful with our lives. Whatever that meaningfulness means to you, whatever opportunity arises for you. This life is, however, a brief and fading window of opportunity. None of us knows what will happen next. And so I'm always reminded of a verse we sang at the Zendo at Upaya at the end of every evening. Life and death are of supreme importance. Time passes quickly, opportunities are lost. Take heed, do not squander your life. And so that is also something that I often chant to myself most days. And he reminds us here of that. And I think it's worth noting to ourselves every day to make that intention, to make that commitment. Right now, even though our lives may seem far from perfect, we have excellent circumstances. We have intelligence, the availability of teachers and teachings, and at least some inclination to study and meditate. Moreover, many of us will become more distracted by worldly pursuits. And then we lose our time and we lose our opportunities. The Buddha assures us that our human birth is ideal with just the right balance of pleasure and pain. The point is not to squander this good fortune. The point is not to squander this good fortune. And so I wanted to really just kind of go back and remind us why we're here today and what with this opportunity for this book. And she does, I think, a great job, Pema Chodron, of helping us look at what Shantideva is saying and brings us into alignment, I think, with living the Dharma in a really true fashion. The next chapter was preparing the ground. And so I want to just take a minute with that as well. How do you prepare the ground? I guess the most obvious place we can really think about is something we just did, which is arriving here. Depending on what faith tradition you're in, you prepare the ground differently. When I was in training down in the at Upaya, preparing the ground meant taking the shoes off at the door, walking in, bowing, going to your seat, bowing to the seat, and then bowing to the Sangha. That's preparing the ground. That's acknowledging the seat at which you'll sit and acknowledging those around you. And it's setting the intention and it's setting the awareness. It's a great opportunity to bring yourself here and present. At that moment that you step through the door, it becomes quiet. In honor of those that are already sitting, but also for you to go quiet with them, and to settle in, and to honor the place that it's a very humbling place to be. in that tradition, when the teacher walked in, we stood up. It doesn't happen in this tradition, but that is, again, that's preparing the ground. Because what you're about to receive is a teaching, which is very special. And so I invite us, excuse me, to really thank you for the tea, by the way. I invite us to really think about how we begin our time here, how we enter into this space, and it's really considered a very sacred space. How we honor our teachers. Paniwadi generally does not like us standing, but just in terms of bowing as she enters in. I'm not saying that's what you must do. I'm saying that's just a way of preparing the ground. Other things that we can do is when we're finished, we end with, she usually ends with a small chant, and we bow out. That's also preparing the ground for us to step out and to leave, because we've just been filled with something very sacred, and to honor that with ourselves instead of running out and then running to the next thing. I consider myself a practicing threshold walker. So every time I go through a threshold, I pause. Most every time. And it gives me an opportunity to take that moment of reflection, of entering into the next, whatever, the next room, the car, out of the car. It gives that pause that really allows your body to catch up with you, especially if you're driving. Just take a minute. Preparing the ground for the next thing. When you wake up in the morning, you get up, I get up and I do wait and just sit there. Sometimes it's about getting myself oriented, but it's preparing the ground for what I'm about to do next. Or preparing a meal, pause. Clean up, pause. Preparing the ground. So the fact that we have this opportunity under preparing the ground, he goes on to, and Pema goes on to discussing what that looks like. But I wanted us to just think about, how do we prepare the ground throughout our day? How do we become mindful as we move through our day, as we greet each other, as we enter in and notice who's there? How do we prepare the ground for that greeting? And because we were moving on to transcending hesitation, commitment, one of the things when I was speaking with Paniwadi this morning, I was sharing with her what meaning this particular chapter and verse, chapter 3, meant to me. And for me, it truly is descending into a deeper inquiry. And she said, notice the tattered spaces. It's noticing the tattered spaces that we bring. And we had quite a wonderful, I'll make sure to tape it, and that could have been tonight's class. It was a great conversation. But I would like to just open up it says transcending hesitation, commitment, doing a deeper inquiry. So I'd like to open up and not have this just be a monologue, to see where everybody's at with that commitment, not just to this book, but to the commitment of the Dharmic life, where you find yourself today. And knowing that Pema talks about, and we've talked about, and Shantideva certainly talked about, is a step-by-step process. It's not something that I'm going to leave and I'll be there. It's a step-by-step. So I would like to just have you share out where you see yourself at as we enter chapter 3, and the deeper inquiry that we're able to have with this reading, this book.
I'll start. In that chapter, I don't remember if it's 29 or which one of the verses it was, but I was struck by every morning when she wakes up, she repeats these two verses 3 times each, and it really struck me, and I do. And that was about the Buddha doing this step by step and abiding, and there I will abide and train myself, that I don't have to be perfect now, which is good because it gave me permission to not berate myself or put myself down or make negative comments about myself, but my progress, because the Buddha started on the first step and then the second step. And it just was so freeing. And so I too chant those 2 verses every morning when I'm getting up, and I sit on the edge of my bed and I repeat them. And I'm totally 100% committed to practicing the Dhamma. And several months ago, Panawati gave us a saying, grant us the blessing of being able to follow the Dharma path, of the Dharma. Grant me the ability to be. Now that I'm sitting here saying it, I can't say it like I normally do, but that the Dharma becomes the path becomes clarification of confusion, and then confusion becomes the final bliss. And it's a chant that she gave us, and that's part of my routine as well, because to me, trying to live the Dhamma that's all there is. That's the most important thing. When I think about becoming a bodhisattva, that gets scary at times. And it's like, can I do it? Do I have the ability? Do I have the heart to walk that path all the way to the end? And it's like, that's the mind. It's just the mind. I'm just going to go step by step, and I know I'm not going to get off the path.
So isn't that true then? You do have the ability?
The ability is like the mind wants to say, you can't do this. That I'm not good at accepting pain.
But your mind is also saying, I will do this step by
But
step.
my mind says, I will, and there's no doubt about it, that I can't help it. And I just have to shove that off and say, well, I'll take what I can today.
Thank you. The verses, I believe, were, because I also highlighted that for me, just as all the Buddhas of the past embraced the awakened attitude of mind, and in the precepts of the Bodhisattvas, step by step, abode and trained. Just so, and for the benefit of beings, I will also have this attitude of mind. And in those precepts, step by step, I will abide and train myself.
It gives me such permission to be okay with wherever I'm at, knowing I'm still got to strive. I love those.
Yeah, I think for me, it's this is a process, and we have some new things that we're working on from Buddha Master, and I would say been able to commit certain of it to a daily practice, a daily contemplation, and then a whole big new chunk that I'm not really sure what to do with. But I guess the overriding theme for me, and we just entered a new phase of our lives, Susan and I, we retired from our job, so we've got, in a sense, commitment to the Dharma, but also commitment to, keeping ourselves active from a physical perspective and maintaining those commitments, so that we can have a thriving, next phase of our lives. But everything's a process. That's the way I see it. Thankfully, I don't get too caught up in being done. And I don't think you can with the kind of things that we're exposed to lately. Done is just not It's just not a thing. So just a process, So I'm engaged in the process. We wake up each day and we start the day with, maybe a cup of coffee, maybe a little bit of meditation, but there's a Dharma practice there, and then it's off to the gym, and then it's off to a tennis clinic, or it's here. Something like that, or it's off to a walk or something like that. So the body, I remember years ago when I was in the ashram, they would stress first the body, then the mind. So taking care of the body, making sure that's done. So that's a daily commitment. So what's my intention each day when I wake up? It has to do with some of those milestones, meeting those milestones, getting the Dharma, getting the physical activity, whatever that is for the day, cooking a meal, getting here. But waking up and knowing this is how I'm going to spend at least the first part of the day. And being clear about, kind of what I'm trying to carry forward. And, for a long time, it was trying to carry forward, and it's still there, is the what is cultivation, and those practices, and that mindset, bringing that out into the day and into the people I meet. So it's all kind of there. It's not one thing. It's certainly, but it's a process and it's unfolding.
Step by step. She writes after those verses, the words step by step are important here. Even the fully awakened ones trained step by step, and we follow their example. So, step by step. So,
just thinking about that question, and Soma, I very simply will wake up in the morning and remind myself. Generally, I'll go through my to-do list because I'm, I've been working and maybe overly busy, and I'll shift and really trying to get rooted this whole notion of impermanence, that this could be my last day. And I have to remind myself of that throughout the day, but it really helps to prioritize how I'm thinking about things and how I'm spending my time. This could be my last day. Helps me let go of anger, or, it just shapes my day, and it prioritizes my thinking and my activities. And this morning, just real quickly, I woke up and I knew I had a lot in my head that needed to be purged. So I wrote. I sat by a candle and I wrote for an hour, just removing the junk. And then I asked questions, talked about being deeply inquisitive. So I have to simply come to the Dharma, like I just don't know. But help me ask the right questions. And then I receive step by step. This is what you'll do today in order to heal this, or whatever the question is. And so I would end by saying, prioritizing impermanence and practicing for me attentively listening instead of talking so much, which I typically do a lot of. Learning to attentively listen and quiet a little bit.
how's that feeling for yourself inside?
I feel very much centered and open to my higher truth, and grounded, I guess.
Again, the question is, how are you seeing your inquiry into this practice? How's it working for you or not working for you?
Hello. So
Ryan,
I like what follows right after some of what you just read. Hey, I gotta shrink this down first. Go there. Let me go back. That since this vow can be broken by one harsh word or flash of anger, we obviously would be wise to be patient with ourselves and give up hope of always getting it right. We can renew our intention to stay open again and again and again. Every morning before I get out of bed, I recite these 2 verses 3 times, as she had mentioned earlier. I do it more at night, but it's that willingness to be light to myself, to understand and bring a little bit of smile to my daily practice also, not to get too harsh when I mess up, because I'm going to mess up. But recognize that I can then, though, be ready for the next step. So a lot, and this has changed a lot over the last decade or so, where I used to be just too hard on myself, and learning to recognize I will fail, but then I can just start again, fail, then start again. And maybe each time go a little bit further along. But that's one of the things that's useful for me, is to recognize that have a little lightness to myself. It makes it easier for me. It makes it better for me, in fact, to embrace the Dharma. And I really like the Preparing the Ground chapter a lot, because when we get down to reflect on our day each night, we do it on our knees. And it's that type of act. You mentioned that we don't stand when Paniwati enters the room, and that's her desire. But I agree that those type of physical things for me to help ground myself are important for me to follow where I can, when it's just not. I guess that's enough. So anyway, just wanted to share those last few sentences after what you read earlier, because they're important sentences for me.
Thank you, Brian. They are. I think they're really, really important. I mean, this whole chapter is really full of those sweet nuggets that help us identify ways of getting through not just the readings, but also how we're going to live this out. What is it going to look like for us? And we're all different. Every single one of us, we can read this, and if each one of us had written about what we had read and understood, it'd probably look different in lots of ways. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing that. Others?
I like the in this particular chapter of transcending hesitation. I mean, every paragraph is a Dharma talk, right? But this one just stood out for me. Sharing merit means surrendering completely with an attitude of letting whatever happens happen. If it's better for me to have pleasure, let me have pleasure. If it's better to have pain, let me have pain. We aren't collecting anything for ego to hold on to. It's quite the opposite. And so, the prominent piece for me is to the whole mindfulness piece. And the mindfulness piece from the perspective of shifting from ego and I to whatever is there in front of me. So I would say, without doing that, it's just another doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. Is how it occurs for me. And then she continues in this chapter talking about dedicated with specific intentions. First, Shantideva dedicates his merit to the sick. If someone you love is ill and suffering greatly, for example, you're willing to give away all that you hold dear. And when I hear the whole dear is me. Not in a good way, holding it dear, because sometimes, I have my whole, selfing is about reducing who I am, which is also selfing. So it's with what I hold dear and letting more and more of that dissolve. And being available, like being truly available for others without all of this Elsie action going on is where I've been working, and which I feel that with, especially with the, the shifting the mind and spending more time in that kind of meditation that allows me to see it more and more and become more clear about it. And there's another, I couldn't find the quote, but there's a quote in here that I loved, which had to do with, and this is not how it's written, but how I perceived it to be was really honoring the clarity of our minds and the wish for others to also have clarity of mind. Is because it's like I've been fuzzy stuff. And then I also realized that confusion is also a manipulation. So that, well, I'm confused about this. And when I take a clear look, I understand what I'm confused about some things.
When you say confusion is a manipulation, is that to yourself or to?
Yeah, to oneself. It's like getting to a point of getting close to where the ego is. And all of a sudden, poof, I'm confused. Because the ego doesn't want to be seen. The light is shining and it wants to slither away. And all of a sudden I have confusion about it.
So in the process of us learning about ourselves, that clears the field in order for us to sow the field for others and with others. And until we can do that in a way that gives us information about ourselves, it's harder to be there in a way that really supports others. It's just not to say you shouldn't do it, but to be more aware and to start again and to start again. Well, I could have done that better, or I could have said that better. Thanks. Like to point out on page 70, if you have the book, and I'm not again sure if the page numbers are accurate, even in the same book, but 3.26, so 26. Today my life has given fruit. This human state has now been well assumed. Today I take my birth in Buddha's line and have become the Buddha's child and heir. How often do we think about being the Buddha's heir? That's pretty great, isn't it? And then my father's heir, and my grandfather's heir, and that's where we think of it, like the Buddha's heir. That's a wonderful thing to know that we are the Buddha's heir. Shantideva then rejoices. From his point of view, once we make the commitment and begin to practice mind training, we are already bodhisattvas. This is an encouraging way to look at our spiritual journey. So we're already there by saying, I want to do this. By saying, I want to read this book. By saying, I want to study the discourses with Buddha Master. By saying, I'm going to come to Dharma today. By saying, I'm going to do my very best each day. We're already the Buddha's heir. And it just brings all sorts of joy up.
And then heir to the others too.
I'm sorry,
Heir to the others.
heir to the others.
Others.
Yes.
The billions and billions and billions of entities we're heirs to.
Well, we
Not necessarily
are.
Buddha.
I mean, we cannot just, but truly for this purpose
Yeah.
is that we really can undertake this.
Yeah.
that really helped me, if we're sharing.
Yes, of course we are.
All the way back to monologue. No.
No.
That part about the aspiration
Mhm.
really helped me. Because again, this idea of being done, or what did I get done? What can I say it's done? You know, what, and especially coming out of the work life, I mean, that's just, and so, yeah, the idea that the aspiration, two things, right? The aspiration, what was it? The aspiration and the implementation, really, are the two things. But that the aspiration takes you so far towards the implementation kind of unfolding, that really wanting to do this, really wanting the best for others, really wanting to save if that's the ultimate thing. That wanting to want that, right? Because, you know, in my current state, I don't know quite what it means to see and be able to hold that fully, right? But I want to know it. And that aspiration is enough, is what I got from that. So that was encouraging, right? That really uplifted me.
I think aspiration does open up stepping in by virtue of just saying, I aspire to do that. That immediately, I mean, we could go into the neurology of that and I won't, but that already sets the intention, really. And that shifts things in the mind, in the brain, actually, to look and do things differently. And if you then take that the next day, it's like exercise. You know, Suka, you were talking about my intention was to go out and walk yesterday, and the wind was blowing, and it was cold and the weather, but even if you just go out the door and do to the end of the block, you know, and I know I've shared this with you, but when I had my surgery, I'm going to get up, I'm going to get out of the chair, and my alarm went off every hour to make sure I got up. And then I'm going to get up and I'm going to walk to the kitchen. And then from the kitchen through the living room and back, and then out the door. And then down to the end of the building, in the parking lot, and then to the next building. And then there was this, what looked like a mountain for me. And I got there and I was scared and I was nervous, but I did it. Now I look at that and I was just a little inclined to get to that's all it was. But don't we do that with ourselves? Don't we create these huge obstacles? But if we have an aspiration for it. And then we have a Sangha that supports that. It says, okay, let's do this. Or I did this, and you think, there's the light bulb for me. Right? Other thoughts?
Yeah, I'd like to add something.
Sure.
And you alluded to this, you mentioned this earlier too, Soma. And I think something that is helpful is to, in order to, build the kind of, creative tension that we want to have in resolving to what we aspire to, is the piece that you talked about earlier, which is the importance of seeing the reality of where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
And the tension between our aspiration and current reality. And the reason I say current reality, because of course that's changing all the time, is really an important piece to guide us and give us the kind of energy we need to resolve. Because if we don't stay focused on that, what happens is we go off to the right in concepts and like when you were saying, the walking up there, what was the reality of your ability to walk up there?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's a concept of, well, I can or I can't, or, somebody told me this. So it's like when it veers off into concepts or preconceived ideas that pulls us away. So the tension starts going there instead of the resolution between the reality and what we want to aspire to.
Well, and understanding what that reality is.
Exactly.
Right? To
Exactly.
say, is this
Instead
real?
of the concept.
Is this real?
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that feels pretty good to me,
yeah, right,
but maybe I can go a couple steps.
yeah,
And then a couple more steps.
yeah.
I
And then, go ahead.
I think this is ringing a bell for me, and especially someone when you talked about your post-surgical rehab, because I think I try to approach my path the same way I did rehab for people. It's that you aspire to something that you don't know whether the outcome will be there or not. It's important to, like we say, row the boat, but we don't know where the shore is going to be when we'll get there. But I think successive approximations to the goal are really important. And I think in my experience, it's really important to celebrate each successive approximation instead of I'm not there yet. It's that evaluation of where I was accomplishing and where I went off. But I think for me, the Sangha and teachers and reading are extremely important because it's the connection that will help me along the path. It's not me alone, because I can fall into the I, me, mine when I'm alone. But and I don't mean meditating, I mean in the doing, because I'm more likely to feel myself as a connected being on the path when I do it step by step. And I have the companionship of the Sangha and teachers along the path. And I'm grateful.
Thank you. Other thoughts? Want to point out on page 68, it's right after the 3.24 verse. There are three approaches to working with the Bodhisattva vow. Our commitment can be made with the attitude of a king or queen, a ferryman, or a shepherd. These images represent ways to go forward realistically, step by step, given our current capabilities. So that's what you were referring to, I think, Elsie. At the level of a king or queen, we work on ourselves first. Although our specific intention is to benefit others, we know this is only possible if we ourselves wake up. Anyone who works in helping professions knows how easy it is to lose one's patient or feel aversion. The next level, dropping down, is the aspiration of the ferryman. Here we find ourselves in the same boat with all sentient beings crossing the water together. The analogy has a sense of just like me. Like me, all beings experience themselves as a central character in life's drama. Like me, they're enslaved by attachments and aversions, hopes and fears. No one wants to experience physical or emotional pain any more than I do. We all want to feel safe and free from fear. Just like me. And so as we look at ourselves, we also are looking outside of ourselves. They're not separate ways of being in the world. And so when you're out there in the world, whether it's stepping out to go to the tennis courts or the grocery store, we engage with people and we make judgments. Oh, that person doesn't have a mask. That person has a mask. This person, whatever it is. I get in line and it's the wrong line and it's taking forever, making judgments, but paying attention to what might be going on with that person as opposed to sticking in our mindset. Just like me, just like me. With this as the basis of our Bodhisattva training, we reach out beyond our self-centered version of reality and bring others into our lives. So I think simply by saying just like me, by truly looking at people beyond my judging mind, I get to say that, I get to feel that, I get to experience that. These other people, they too want to feel comfortable and at home with themselves and with their world. May all of us be happy and at our ease, and may we all experience the clarity and freshness of our mind. To awaken bodhicitta, we start where we are and go forward step by step.
Could I refer to something a little bit earlier?
Sure.
So it's right after 3.4, right before 3.5. This could have been written today. Pema wrote, I read a series of articles about a woman whose main practice was to stop hating political leaders. By day 35, she reported not doing too good, but still not caving in. This definitely the Bodhisattva spirit. Allow ample time for change to occur so you don't lose heart. But I mean, that's the practice I work on a lot right now, which is to recognize people who are in a different perspective are really just like me, but just in a different place. And to learn to have that bodhicitta and heart for those people is a really good practice for me. To look at the political divide and understand that, you know, causes and conditions put me here, causes and conditions put them there, and that to have a bodhicitta heart for everybody in that way is a really good practice for me. And I slip a lot, but it's a, and she talks later about fact is it's right back around 3.6 or so. Let me pull it up. Doing this stuff on a Kindle just makes it so much easier to get around.
I don't see 3.6.
Right in the middle, this is 3.28. Right in the middle of our foulest emotions, we find the precious gem. That in the midst of confusion and reactivity, we find the jewel of bodhicitta. The most negative emotions can serve as the basis for compassion. And that's what that previous reading about political people and having comfort for them, that's where bodhicitta starts to arise for me often, is recognizing that that negative emotion I have is a seed to work with. So those two sections of this chapter, which are far apart, 3.4 and 3.28, really came together for me when I was we read this book in Naropa, so this was maybe 8 years ago now, 7 years ago at least. No, boy, 8. But being able to highlight stuff in the Kindle and easily find them has really helped me bring some of these thoughts together and connect them anyway. So it's a wonderful book, it really is.
Yeah, it's great. Thank you, Brian. I think just below that, that really stood out for me, no matter what arises, we can always find the soft spot of the Bodhi heart. No matter what arises.
Last night I'm reading the book Queen by Alex Huxley.
Mhm.
And in this part, it was about the slave master, who the master says, you control all our slaves and make sure they do what they're supposed to do. And how cruel he could be with the floggings and the beatings and the things that were done to the women and so forth, to keep these animals that we call slaves working for us like it's their job to do, and that's who we are. And the cruelty of the slave master. And I found myself saying, do I love this person? How can I love this person? From not a human love, not me to another person, but as a bodhicitta. How can I hold this person in love? And I spent a lot of time on that, and it's not easy. Working toward it step by step, but still it's a struggle. So I'm thinking when you talk about the politician, it's the same kind of thing. And doing all kinds of things with my mind to bring myself to accept this person with love. And let all of that black and darkness of disgust remove from myself. It's a challenge.
Just if I could comment on
Yes.
what you just, Suga and Brian, after the holidays and being with family members. And that's why the writing and getting really very honest about the anger and resentment towards abuse of family members and having to be with them and pretend it's okay. And in the past, I think I would push, you're not really angry, it would be more of an intellectual gymnastics type of thing. But in fact, no, there's a lot of, I think you just called it disgust and shame and, really getting sitting with that and knowing this is where I am. I really find you repugnant. I really don't like you. And then asking, for help. Please help me to see this in a way where I can forgive. They're suffering. How can I help, or can I? Or how can I help me first? So working with that and allowing myself to feel what's coming up without self-condemnation and shame for feeling those feelings. So
Thank you for that, because I find I don't ask for help enough.
yeah,
It's like I have to do it. And I forget
how to see
to
that.
ask.
I can't, how do I see this? Shift me. How do I see this? How do I forgive them?
Thich Nhat Hanh's wonderful poem, Call Me by All My Names, is one of the ones that I keep referring back to help me understand this myself and how I react better. So if you've not read it, I think that's the title of it, Call Me by All My Names by Thich Nhat Hanh. It's
My true name, yeah.
My True Names, thank you.
Isn't it amazing when the space starts clearing what surfaces and how it surfaces? I can imagine with both you and Joe, now that you're retired, whatever that means, but the clearing the space to give you some opportunities to just see what's there. It's been there all along, and you didn't have time or the inclination to step in and to see it. And now, and I think the Dharma really allows us, gives us a guidepost. I call it my North Star. When things get really rough, and I notice it internally, I take that time to just let it settle and then to see what's there. And then being able to note, oh yeah, those feelings are there. And then the aspiration to want to step into it. Emma talks a lot about leaning into these, and we are so inclined to step back or run away from more difficult situations, more hardships, but to truly lean into it and find that, wow, it's not as challenging. It might take a little more leaning than usual, but eventually I think there, for me at least, there's that sense of, okay, I got this, nothing bad happened. I leaned in, I said what I need to say, I did what I need to do. And often there's welcoming that happens as a result of that. There's allowing, which builds the muscle to do it some more and some more. We are nearing the end of our time. Are there thoughts, sort of recap, any last minute in that minute, last few minutes?
I just wrote, I don't know who said it. Was it you or was it in the book? Or did Brian say it? Just like me. I'm always looking for ways to carry out, particularly what is cultivation, right? So, and those the first set of 7 branches, and use that to carry out, how do I see people? Seeing everyone as my mother, those kinds of ideas. But this, just like me. So I'm always aspiring to sort of find ways to work with that, when I'm in contact with the world. And this now gives me something new and exciting to get out and just like me. That'll be a great reminder and a great tool for me to take that a little further, to take my aspiration there a little further. So thank you.
Well, that's Pema, and she uses it a lot. She uses it in here as well. If you haven't read it recently, Prison of Life, it's back to that again, all the prisons, and they aren't all bad things. Some of the good things can be prisons as well. But we do create our prisons, or we continue to weave our prisons in ways that don't serve us well.
And then the piece about, I think there were 2 things you mentioned, the one about the just like me that was also connected to fear, and another fear in something else, and to be aware that when people have certain reactions, like really political or whatever it may be, that they're also trying to protect themselves because they have fear of, whatever we need to protect. So I think that's always a good place to look, because it takes away from the person, and then it has me be more aware that we're all in that space together, and it's not a person or a party or whoever did whatever horrible thing in the past. It's all about we basically want to be saved. And I don't remember the other word that you used, but it was fear and something else in that statement about me. And then the whole me thing, like, do we even want to talk about me anymore? It's not me, and it's not even me, and it's not even you.
Life is but a dream.
It's not me, and it's not you.
We used to say in the schools, I used to say to teachers, all behavior has meaning. When they would really be challenged with primarily a student, but that could be true for adults as well. When something comes up, the cashier is mean and rotten, and it was interesting. I just have to share this. I had a low tire, and my light came on in the car, and so I went to a tire place, and the place I went to, I pulled up and immediately had the judgment. And then I went in, and there was a line, and there was a guy I labeled a curmudgeon. And he was cranky, and he was yelling at people, and he was this. And I just watched him for a minute, and then, but he wasn't. Underneath that, he was trying to help somebody. But he was yelling at this guy, you overfilled the thing, I told you before. And so I went up and I said, I think I got a tire problem. I filled the air in, and it's now the tire saying it's low. And so he said, give me your keys. And so I sat there. And they came out, and he says, you overfilled the tire. And I said, did? He goes, yeah. I said, you can yell at me. He goes, maybe. And it just reduced the whole thing down. And he was just so friendly and engaging. But as you know, and so it was sort of like, what? I stood there and watched, what's going on for him? And it's these people just like me coming in and overfilling or underfilling or not filling or whatever. But all behavior has meaning. And so instead of reacting or puffing ourselves up in defense or whatever, to say, well, what's really being said here? And I don't need to know. I just get to be with it. Tires, no lights on in the car yet.
That's
Doing just fine, doing just fine. Any other comments? Thoughts?
What are we doing for next week?
What are we doing for next week?
Yeah, as far
If
as
we're all gonna
assignment
be
or
around.
homework.
Well, using our
Right, on board.
intelligence, awareness.
Oh, no, not that. Not our intelligence.
So let's go through to the next chapter. I'm making the assignment today.
We're doing a chapter.
You're liking this, huh?
I'm
doing a
stepping back
chapter?
into the old days.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see. Unless it's, it looks like it's a pretty. Yes, ooh, you're gonna have to read. 102, up to page 102 if you're in the book. Using our intelligence awareness.
Thank you for today.
So I'd like to end with the verse that Sukha brought to us today in Shantideva's verse 0.23 and 0.24. Just as all the Buddhas of the past embraced the awakened attitude of mind, and in the precepts of the Bodhisattvas, step by step, abode and trained. Just so, and for the benefit of beings, I will also have this attitude of mind. And in those precepts, step by step, I will abide and train myself. Thank you. Have a great week.